Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Wherever you are in the world, I just want to thank you for joining me and giving me your time, energy, and attention at this moment. My name is Reverend Phoenix Coffin Williams. I am the first priest of the Corellian tradition. And of course, if you are here for this week's segment of Fridays with Phoenix. Last time when we met, it was the first episode of this second season, and we talked about the emphasis on Kemetic spirituality, Kemetic philosophy, Kemetic theurgy, and Kemetic magic. And we talked about the creation story from ancient Egypt. We focused our attention on specifically the figure of Atum and Atum as the self-created God. We focused on the creation story from Atum all the way down to Hetheru, Nebtet, Auset, Ausar, Sutek. And we started to talk about the first order, second order, third order of creation. Today, I want to focus on, again, the concept of Atum, who was the self-created God, the God who willed themselves into existence, into differentiated existence out of the waters of noon. And the role that Atum played in creation altogether. I talked about their existence as a sun god, and I talked about their relationship to the alchemical symbol for the sun, which is the circle with the little dot in the center. And I talked about how that dot actually represented the very tip of the obelisk, which is it's known in Egyptian mythology, and how that obelisk was actually the phallus or the penis of the earth god Geb. Today, I do want to return to talking about Atum, and I want to talk about Atum as the supreme deity. However, the point that I want to start to make and the bit of illumination that I want to bring is that Atum, the supreme creator deity, who is known by different names in different cities in Egypt or in Kemet. So from the place of Anu, from the place of Memphis, from the place of Thebes, the deity has a different name. So I am going with Atum, but y'all might know of Ra, y'all might know of Ptah, what have you. But down the line, like the myth is the same, the story is the same, the principles are the same. It's the names that are different. Atum is considered to be one creator divinity, for sure, for certain. However, Atum has different aspects to themselves, and these aspects also have a name, they also have a consciousness, they also have a function. Today, I want to talk about two of these aspects. There is one more aspect, and these three aspects together, they are a part of the Supreme Being. They were not created the same way that Shu, Tefnut, Geb, Nu, Osiris, Isis, Set, Nebtet, and Horus were created. They are not like descendants. They don't represent the order of creation. They don't represent the succession to the kingship in the way that the Shu and Geb and Osiris do. Hetheru and Djehutie, as well as Ma'at, are all aspects of Atum. However, they weren't created by Atum. They all represent very subtle aspects that in their unison or in their united form, it's all Atum. However, they can all be sent out. They all go out and perform their own subtle functions. Right now, because it's midday, maybe if you are from a Hermetic perspective, you might say a prayer at this time. Hail unto you who is Hetheru, in your triumphing, and hail to you who is Hetheru in your beauty. You sail across the skies in your bark at the noon rising or the noontime of the sun, with Djehutie standing in your splendor at the helm, and Rahor, at the Djehutie stands in his splendor at the helm, and Rahor standing at the prow, or something like that. And folks who are Kemetic might have a similar prayer at this time for a noontime adoration to the sun god. Hail to you, Hetheru. Hail to you, Hathor. Hail to you, Ator, the beautiful, radiant, and ferocious one. You who are the majesty of all things pleasurable, but also of righteous wrath. Your presence is welcomed here at this noontime as we bask in the glory of the sun. What have you? Some kind of prayer at the middle of the day that references that Hetheru is a noontime or midday manifestation of Atum, of Ra, of the creator divinity. Might be something that happens. These two operate independently of Atum, and this is declared in a couple of myths. First and foremost, one of my favorite myths to tell is the time where, Atum, Ra, Creator Supreme One, was old, not dying, not out of blazing sunlight, not out of gas, but they were old, maybe a little bit tired. Maybe they were a little bit tired of humanity's antics, what have you. But Atum was, just listening about across creation and heard humans talking hella shit about how old he was getting, about their old agedness or what have you. And so Atum was like, well, how ungrateful, how unbecoming, what nonsense these people are talking. And Atum got so enraged that he sent his right eye out in the form of, it was Hathor, it was Hetheru, sent out, and in this way, she transformed herself into the lioness Sekhmet. And in her fury, she went out and really got her smite game on. All of the disobedient little bitches, she gobbled them up, and she was on a roll. She was on a complete and total obliteration bender at the command of Atum. And so she was going at it, left and right, up and down, back and forward. She was getting these people who were, the phrase is ifset, and it means violence, disorder, chaos. It's literally the opposite of ma'at. And so she went out and she got that ass. And she was so good at it and she was so ferocious at it that the other divinities were like, oh shit, what is old girl up to? How is she going to be stopped? Because if something isn't done, there will be no humans left. Creation is really about to be sucked up dry by her fury. And so what Atum did is he mixed 10,000 jars of beer and red ochre and mandrake, depending on what myth you're reading, but creates a liquor concoction that is the color of blood, pours it all out along the valley, almost as wide and as vast as a second Nile. And Sekhmet comes across this and goes down, takes a drink. It's delicious. She drinks and drinks and drinks. And as the alcohol, as the liquor starts to take hold, of course, you know what happens when beer takes hold. Like your inhibitions lower, things become a little bit less aggy. You get a little bit more playful. You get a little bit more happy. You get a little bit more flirtatious. All of that. So the liquor takes hold, and Sekhmet is returned to her loving, joyous, nurturing form that is Hetheru or Hathor. And from that moment on, everybody knew what was up. Hathor, of course, Hetheru, of course, the lady of pleasure, lady of joy, lady of dancing, but also fuck around and find out. That's a real thing. So that's one of the mythologies that I like to talk about when it comes to understanding the dynamic nature of Hetheru. Yeah, she is loving. Yes, she is nurturing. Yes, she is pleasure. Yes, she is music. Yes, she's the lady of the sistrum. And depending on what our personalities are like, it might also be curtains for us. Dynamic. Over here, we have another aspect of Atum. So a version of Atum, not created by Atum, but a part of Atum when Atum willed himself into existence, is Djehutie, also known as Thoth. Djehutie is the divine intellect, the divine wisdom, the right use and the right application of knowledge. Is the scribe of the gods, is the one who knows everything that there is to know. Homie is clever, homie is resourceful, homie is, about that trickery, not mean-spirited trickery, not, the trickery that is related to other divinities, where you might get a trick played on you and you might find yourself feeling or looking like a little bit foolish, although that can happen. If you've got set in your ego, in your heart, in your mind, then yeah, like that might open you up to what the Greeks called hubris, and you might feel a little bit foolish. You might get got. However, this Djehutie Thoth is about the correct application of our knowledge. It's about the correct use of our knowledge and our wisdom. It's about knowing the sciences, knowing the mathematics, knowing the language, writing things down to preserve it for future generations. Formulas, not just like recipes for like food or spells, but like a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Y equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared. Like that, those kind of formulas. All within the wheelhouse of Djehutie. And one of my favorite myths involving this divinity is when Atum had mandated that Nut, Sky Mother, whose love and affection for Geb was so strong that he called upon Tefnut to separate them. She became pregnant with the 5 children, Osiris, Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Hetheru, also known as Alsar, Alset, Sutek, Neptet, and Heru-Ur. So Nut got pregnant with these 5 divinities, and Atum was like, unfortunately, you're not going to be allowed to give birth on any of the days that currently exist. And that became mandate, that became law. Djehutie took some empathy on Nut and was like, all right, we're going to figure out a way to get these kids out of you. We're going to figure out a way for you to be able to give birth. And so Djehutie went to another divinity, a moon god. And so fun fact, Hetheru, crowned with the solar disk, solar divinity. Djehutie actually more linked to the moon and is a moon divinity. But Djehutie goes to another moon divinity, Khonshu, and wagers in some bets and some gambling, where if Djehutie wins, Djehutie gets some slivers of moonlight. And if Khonshu wins, then Djehutie would make it worth Khonshu's while. Would give up some secret knowledge or some secret names or some secret formulas or what have you. But alas, it's to no avail. Khonshu loses plenty of times, and Djehutie wins enough slivers of moonlight to create 5 new days. These days are called the epigomenal days, and it is why we have a 365-day calendar, according to the Kemet. And so on those 5 days, Nut is able to give birth because they are not a part of the original 360 days that were under the restriction of Atum's mandate. And so with Hetheru representing not just pleasure and joy and wrath and fury, she is the subtle energy that supports and maintains creation. The other divinity who represents an aspect of Atum, who is not depicted here, is Ma'at or Mayat, depending on how you've heard it or how you read it. M-A'-A-T, Ma'at is how I pronounce it. She is divine order, balance, harmony, truth, justice, that kind of thing. And so when things are going as they ought to be going, we say they are going in accordance with the laws of Ma'at. But when something violates that, we say that it's going against Ma'at. It is Ifset, and Hetheru or Hathor will right that wrong. Or Djehutie, in his cleverness and in his wisdom, will right that wrong. And they both maintain that Ma'at balance in different kinds of ways. Hetheru was also said to be the hand that pleasured Atum when he ejaculated, masturbated, and kickstarted creation. She was both the hand that aroused him and the force of the seed itself. So that movement, that principle that happens when energy goes from being potential energy, which is not moving, to being like active energy, when movement is happening and it is occurring, when the atoms are moving. It is the energy provided by Hetheru that allows them to move, that allows them to orbit. It's the energy that is released during exothermic reactions, and it is the energy that is absorbed during endothermic reactions. Those two phrases, exothermic and endothermic, are phrases that are very much linked to chemistry. Chemistry being a life science that we still use today that originated in Kemet in ancient Egypt. So Lady Hetheru is that energy. It's the energy that causes the orbits around the suns and the stars. It is the energy that has galaxies moving in a spiral direction, we believe, back towards its source, unless I'm missing some updated information about the movement of galaxies. And then Djehutie knows all of the stars that are in the sky, knows their names, knows their functions, knows their positions, knows their orbits, knows what's on them, what's in them. One of the epithets for Djehutie is the Lord of Measures. So literally anything that can be counted, he is the Lord of. So 10 fingers, 10 toes, 5 petals on a flower, X amount of petals on a daisy. The roots go in 10 inches deep. The roots go in 4 inches deep. 32 degrees, 72 degrees, 90 degrees, temperature, and in a circle. All of these are measures, and it is in the wisdom and knowledge and wheelhouse of Djehutie. How this is helpful in Kemetic spirituality and in a personal spiritual approach that involves Kemetic divinities is understanding where to go to help you purify your personality in a certain form, where to go to ask for divine help and assistance, and which of the manifestations of divinity is likely to get you the enlightenment that you require. When it comes to Kemetic philosophy and spirituality, the whole point is to help us recognize our natural state as a manifestation of the Creator. Everything that exists is a manifestation of the Creator. However, during the various orders of creation, something has happened that allows us to forget. We can call the principle ego, and even ego, not even to a degree, even ego is a manifestation of Atum. And in the principles, the ego is represented by the god Set or Sutek, the storm, the yearning, the wanting, the lusting after things. And we see the interplay of the ego with the higher self when we talk about the trials of Sutek and Hetheru. Hetheru being the enlightened one, the one who overcomes adversity in order to recognize themselves as divinity. But these two right here in particular, when you are wanting to increase your energy, if you're wanting to increase your motivation, if you are wanting to find some extra strength or some extra power to help push you in the direction towards your enlightenment or towards your highest will. Hetheru, Hathor, absolutely the one to consult with, the one that can help purify your personality and get rid of those things that maybe weigh you down or that are counter to the laws of Ma'at. When you want to know something. And so for those of you who maybe think about the 4 pillars, to know, to will, to dare, to remain silent. To know is in the wheelhouse of Djehutie. To dare is in the wheelhouse of Hetheru. If you want assistance in learning anything at all, it's the wheelhouse of Djehutie. If you want to increase your cleverness, your cunning, if you want to learn how to recognize or exploit loopholes in the system, Djehutie, all the way. In this particular altar setup, I do have here a candle. Candles, of course, in the Karelian tradition, they provide energy, help with the mood. They act as like a battery for the workings. So for anyone who is watching, like my prayer is that you find something helpful. My prayer is that attending to the divinities also purifies my personality and helps me find further enlightenment and further uplifting. The incense act as both an offering and they carry the prayers off to the heavens. But I have them represented here as well with the chalice and the blade. There's the chalice here being the womb of the goddess, and the blade being the phallus of the god. And in magical experimentation, it is common and also recommended, like I do recommend, combining these dynamic and polar forces to substantiate the stuff that I am working for, or to substantiate the stuff that you are working for. So an example of some lower level or egoic magic that might be accomplished through a union of Djehutie and Hetheru might be to know or learn who your ideal partner is, or to learn or know what your ideal working situation might be, or to learn and understand who your work besties are, and then also to have that divine anointing upon it. Might be a reason to set up the cone of power, might be a reason to unite these divinities. That might be an example of a petition that you might make. Love magic, of course. Abundance magic, of course. Healing magic, absolutely. We talked about just a few seconds ago the role that Djehutie played in helping Newt, relieve herself of like the pregnant condition that she was in by wagering and getting slivers of moonlight. There's another story in which Hetheru helps her husband Hetheru by restoring his eyesight when his eyes were gouged out by his uncle Set during one of their many trials. And so having these two energies unify in this way could be profoundly helpful in any healing. The divine nurturing and the know-how, the bandage and the wisdom of how to apply the bandage, the medicine and the wisdom of how the medicine works or how to apply the medicine, are examples of why you might have these two on the altar together, even recognizing that they are also subtle aspects of the creator themselves. The fact that Atum is made up of like the Atum consciousness, the Djehutie consciousness, the Ma'at consciousness, and the Hetheru consciousness is why I discuss Atum as being very androgynous. Even though the creator story does discuss masturbation and ejaculation, the entire figure is made up of a balance of these potencies of masculinity and femininity. And from the balance of these two potencies, which is symbolized in this way, through a balance of these potencies, we literally get all of nature and all of creation. Hopefully you find this helpful. Continue to say your prayers. Continue to purify your personality by reading up on the Kemetic divinities and what they represent and the role that they play in creation and the role that they play in shaping society and the role that they play in shaping our personalities or shaping your personality. Doing some shadow work about what you believe about the relationship between love and war might be a helpful meditation to do, might be some helpful shadow work to do. And then also doing some meditation and some self-searching or some soul-searching on your relationship to science, mathematics, the order of things, might be some helpful shadow work to do as well. I will be back next week with some more discussion on Kemetic divinities, Kemetic principles, and philosophy and magic. So definitely join me then if you are so inclined to do so. And until next time, I'm wishing 1,000 blessings upon your head, and blessed be.